although I was uneasy about going back to 70%, if you go back to that other video, at one point before we started using Profit First, we were operating at 94% operating expense. Like, it was crazy. I wasn't paying myself. The business wasn't making any profit. It was pretty rough. So going back to 70% really wasn't a big deal. I didn't like it, but I wasn't super uncomfortable about it because I knew I had come down from 94 to 48. So I know over time I'm going to be able to come back down from 70. I don't know that I'll settle out at 48%, but I have full confidence that I'll be able to bring that down to somewhere between 50 and 55% over time as we go through. All right, guys, welcome back to Jerk Block Talk. Jason Fernandez here. Today, we're going to do a follow-up on a previous show. So if you've been following any of the content that we do, we just went through an expansion about 6 months ago. So I talked a little bit about that expansion, and I'll put that episode up on this side up here, actually on that side. And so if you've been watching some of this content, you know that we use the Profit First for accounting purposes of like running our business. What that allowed us to do when we expanded is pretty safely shift around our operating expense so that we could manage the expansion and all of the associated costs with that. Because quite frankly, I asked around to a lot of different forums and different things like that, and I got not a ton of like nitty gritty, like detailed advice. A lot of it was very general advice, which is good. But at some point, like, I need some tactical advice as far as like how to go about this to do it in some kind of like tactical or strategic manner. If you're not familiar with Profit First, go ahead and really look into that. I've done another video on that as well for Profit First. We use that. But there's going to be a lot of unknowns when you expand. You're going to want to account for most of the knowns, right? So I know that there's going to be increased rent. I know that I'm going to have a certain number of known projects, but there's going to be some variable expenses that you're not really going to know the exact number on. So things like, you're not really going to know exactly what it's going to cost you in utilities for lighting, AC if you're going to run. We have six HVAC units in the whole 11,000 square feet now. Not really know what it's going to cost me in additional supplies. Like roughly double is what we accounted for, but it was a little less than that, because now we have 4 restrooms instead of 2, but it wasn't double. And then just never ending, like the small projects, like, you know, changing outdoors, doing like little beautification projects, renovating some of the bathrooms that you won't prioritize on the front end and shouldn't. You should be able to just get to those little projects as you come along, but you still need to factor them in to your budget moving forward. So what we did was, before we expanded, we were at a 48% operating expense, which is pretty good. I was like super happy with that, which was, looking at those numbers, that was what made it safe for us to expand, and we could pay for the space without bringing in any additional revenue. So that was the safe bet for us. And profit was sitting at about 10%. That was not including owner pay. That was just after all expenses. Profit was 10% profit margin. So this is pre-expansion. When we expanded, we basically could just shift a ton of our little tiny budgets like equipment, social media, continuing education, and shifted a little bit out of profit, because that's quite frankly what it's there for. We shifted it and we went to 70% operating expense and bumped down to 5% profit margin. And that allowed us to move pretty safely and navigate that, where we weren't in any kind of financial duress as we moved forward. But I wouldn't have been able to do that, and I would not have been able to make kind of educated decisions about where we should move our money around. I made very minimal adjustments to my pay, but I did take a bit of a pay cut, but that was in the plan. Like, that was part of what was going on. And the goal is to work back to these percentages using exactly what we do now, but by generating more revenue and growing the business. Now, post So this was immediately shifted. So we expanded in December. These were the changes we made that went into effect like February, right? So pretty much immediately. But now we've kind of bumped back. We're back down. We're back to 8% profit margin, which is good. And then we've bumped this back to, I think it's 66%. So I've bumped that down another 4% and bumped that up 3% as we've gone through. But it took about 6 months for us to kind of find a new kind of operating financially, operating within the building and kind of getting a good flow. But had I not been using Profit First, had I not had a pretty good idea of like where we could shift money and could we facilitate these variable expenses as we went through, that would have been much, much more of a nightmare. We'll get back to these percentages as we grow the businesses and we talk about kids, and I'll do that in later videos. But I wanted to give you guys some kind of tactical advice going through this. And, you know, there's a lot of pie in the sky ideas, which are really, really good things. But at some point I need to get down into the dirt and I need to know like what needs to happen in order to facilitate this. Using Profit First really allows you to do this pretty simply, and you can just verify this. We have a Profit First accountant who verified it, and I walked through this with them beforehand and then afterwards and slowly made the shifts. So I'll slowly start shifting all of these numbers down until I can get back. But the idea at the end of the day is to run your operating expense as low as humanly possible. And that means kind of depleting that operating expense count so that you can only spend a minimal amount of money. The big thing that this shift, although I was uneasy about going back to 70%, if you go back to that other video, at one point before we started using Profit First, we were operating at 94% operating expense. Like, it was crazy. I wasn't paying myself. The business wasn't making any profit. It was pretty rough. So going back to 70% really wasn't a big deal. I didn't like it, but I wasn't super uncomfortable about it because I knew I had come down from 94 to 48. So I know over time I'm going to be able to come back down from 70. I don't know that I'll settle out at 48%, but I have full confidence that I'll be able to bring that down to somewhere between 50 and 55% over time as we go through. But I did want to go through that because, quite frankly, like, these were just some things that I didn't get a lot of guidance from anybody in any forum that I went to. And I just think this is super valuable information as you're going through in order to navigate that. So if you're not using Profit First, you should be. What that's going to allow you to do is take basically all of your excess, dump it into your operating expense, and know that that's going to be more than enough to cover all of these variable expenses that are going to come up with an expansion that you're just not really going to be able to plan for. You don't know expansions always cost more than you think they're going to cost, and then there's like follow-on projects for all that stuff. You know, we just had to have a bunch of the HVACs worked on. So instead of 2, now it's like 6 that we have to work on. But so I hope this helps. Again, if you guys, I cannot recommend that enough to start using that system. It just made my life super easy. And that is, using that is like the first step to, as an owner, to start to pay yourself. So if you're not doing that, you can look forward to doing that once you start using Profit First. And the big thing that I think was super valuable is that with the expansion, it didn't take a lot out of me. It did take some, but that's a conscious decision that I made to do that because it was best interest for the business, and I'll get that back later on down the road as we grow and we create more opportunity for the coaches and we expand the different revenue streams. So yeah, this is normal, right? When you go through an expansion, there's not really a scenario where like you get to keep your same margin but, you know, double your overhead. Like, that just doesn't exist. So but that's what you put the margin in there for. You put it in the margin in there for so that you can take advantage of opportunity when it presents itself. If you have no profit margin, if you're not paying yourself, if you got no cash reserves, you just don't have the opportunity to take advantage when you need to. You're not gonna be able to go to the bank and ask for money because you're not gonna have any money, and that's how the bank works. So anyway, I hope this helps. If you guys like this stuff, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you got any questions about this or any of this stuff, feel free to hit me up. I love helping gym owners with this stuff. So I think it's crazy valuable. So if you got questions, go ahead and drop those in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.